Looking for a workout program? Lucky for you, I know exactly who you should go to. 18 Alpha Fitness. That's at 18 Alpha Fitness on Instagram or 18alphafitness.com. Kevin Edgerton, owner-operator, not only has he been through the selection courses as a Green Beret, he's also picked up a whole bunch of medical credentials. And then on top of that, he's been a coach within the Air Force Spec Warfare pipeline. And I've seen the results, and the results are good. Very successful. So Kevin is that perfect merger of experience, both as student and as cadre. And he brings that together with the science. And he's always learning as much as he can. We've had him on the podcast. He'll tell you all about it. So the flexibility, the breathing, the strength, the conditioning, and not only will Kevin tell you what to do, but if you follow Kevin, what you'll realize very, very quickly is that he still lives that lifestyle. He's got an old gray beard, and I'm still scared of him. So head on over to 18 Alpha Fitness, use your One's Ready code, get your discount, and let Kevin help you achieve your goals. Hey everybody, welcome back to the team room. You're here with just Trent today as far as the One's Ready crew, but that's okay because we're making up for it by having a guest that I'm super excited about. I don't really want to give too much away. I want to save it for the questions. But Mr. now Troy Knight, Australian combat controller, is here with us. Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast, but please introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Former Australian combat controller. I'll preface it with that. Did 21 years in the military. Most of that was active duty, some reserve time in there where I took a hiatus and did some private contracting overseas. 13 of those years as a combat controller. Before that, I was Australian Air Force conventional side, so our equivalent of security forces. Just because combat control in Australia, you've got to, I think you guys call it cross-train. You've got to be in another conventional job before you can go into special operations. Medically retired at the beginning of last year, been out now for just over 12 months, and spend my time volunteering amongst not-for-profit organisations that look after veterans and emergency responders here in Australia, as well as do some personal life coaching and keynote speaking.
Nice. Well, and admittedly, before we came on, I was stalking your Instagram page a little bit to find out some more about you and more beyond the combat control career and all that other stuff. But it looks like you were a fighter. It looked like Muay Thai before. Was that before you joined or while you were still in the Air Force?
No, that was before I joined. I dabbled in a lot of things, career-wise, thinking I was going to make, sport-wise, thinking I was going to make a career out of sport. So, yeah, I fought, it was only amateur Muay Thai here in Australia. Had 10 fights, 8 wins, a loss and a draw. And, yeah, that was just one of my fights. I just came across, unfortunately, I've lost most of my videos. They're all VHS, and I just was rummaging through some stuff because I'm moving soon. Found that video and managed to get it transferred over into digital. And I thought, I'll just show the world, have a good laugh at myself. But luckily, it was one of the ones that I won and not drew or lost. So
nice. No, and I feel like we have to explain it because so much of our audience is, the young people looking to join the military. VHS, when we say putting things on tape, it was actually tape. So you go back and have a look. But I found it interesting because I don't think that's unusual, that draw to combat and then ending up in the military. So what was it about the Australian Air Force that made you want to join in the first place?
So I always wanted to join. Both my grandfathers were pretty big influences in my life. One of them served in World War II, and the other one was just what we call here a bushman. So he was very handy in the woods, very survival-wise, understood the bush, and he taught me how to shoot. And I always used to go shooting, hunting, pigs, goats, rabbits, any sort of feral pest here in Australia. So I did that, and then I grew up listening to my other grandfather's war stories about fighting the Japanese in Papua New Guinea. And he just had me mesmerised with the adventure of, fighting the Japanese. Obviously, he used to tell me some gruesome stories, which I now look back and go, they were pretty gruesome, and he probably shouldn't have been telling a 7-year-old that. So, but I mean, that sort of lit the fire in my belly to join the military. I left school, I did an apprenticeship and qualified in that trade. And then we had East Timor kick off over here, which is a country just north of us. It was occupied by Indonesia at the time. I believe America put some troops over there as well. So we got the Australian government sent the Australian military at the time for a peace enforcing mission. So they went over there. I was still a civilian at the time, so I rushed. I was like, nah, I'm out of my job. I'm going to recruiting. Rushed down to recruiting. I actually tried to join up as infantry in the army, like in the Australian Army. So I got accepted for that. And then due to everyone rushing into the recruiting office, because it was our first real conflict since Vietnam. I think we had a few peacekeeping missions in Rwanda and Somalia. They were more medically oriented, and there was a few other minor sort of evacuation things, but this was the first real conflict. Like our special, our SASR, they were getting into contacts, like they were doing cross-border missions and getting into contacts everywhere. Our divers were, wrecking the beaches, like hydrographic wrecking, like sneaking in before stuff. So you're hearing all these stories coming out, and it just enthused me even more. So, but what it did, there was an influx of recruiting here in Australia. So everyone just rushed out to the recruiting offices and wanted to sign up. So due to that, it was going to be, so that was around, that would have been August or September 1999. And I wasn't getting into like what we call recruit training here for the Army until I think my position was offered in August of 2000. So that was nearly a 12-month wait. That was too long for me. I didn't like that. As recruiters do, I'm sure they do the same in the States. Different services will try and poach you and then try and sell you something anyway. So they put this video in, and he's like, or DVD in at the time or whatever it was, and he's like, oh, just watch this. This is on what we call Airfield Defence Guard, which is the same thing as security forces. Just protecting the air bases, going outside the wire and sort of patrolling out and things like that, whether it be vehicle mounted or on foot. They said, watch this, and of course they just showed the best parts of the job. So I was like, yeah, and they're like, you've got the same, they're the same scores, like the same aptitude test scores as a rifleman in infantry. Do you want to do that? And he said, and what really sold it to me, the recruiter goes, I can get you in February to start your recruit training. End of January, start of February, I think it was. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So I signed on the dotted line that day, and then February I was off and, went down the garden path that way.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing as over here where it's like, hey, we're basically the infantry of the Air Force. I've heard it sold that way, the security forces. And
that's exactly the way they sold it.
That's crazy. The overlap. And also, though, it's crazy because, like, we had, like, the same thing after 9/11, right, is the rush to the recruiters, everybody trying to get in and to serve their country. And there's always that like moment where we all try to get in. So I'm guessing security forces, while you probably found some opportunities and some cool stuff to do within there, because I think what some people don't understand and what I always try to preach about the military is you can do as much as you want to do. And if you're a performer, basically, no matter where you're at, you're going to find yourself doing interesting things. But what was that experience like? And, obviously you wanted to get out of there when you had the opportunity.
Yeah, it was a good experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world. People often ask me, do you wish you went infantry? And it's the same with combat control. Like our two Army Special Operations elements are the 2nd Commando Regiment and the Special Air Service Regiment. And people ask me, do you wish you went to, those guys? And I said, no, I don't. I like the versatility, of combat control. And that's the same with SecFor or the security force side of things. I liked it, and I had the best times and made the best friends. It was just, in the end, when I decided to discharge, like I was getting a bit, not disgruntled, but I just realised it wasn't the thirst of action. Like I wasn't going to get that outside the wire combat that I had that lust for, and and that's where I sort of went contracting. But with that, I did two really good. I did multiple deployments, but I did two really good deployments. One to Iraq, where we rolled in. That's what I was saying to you. Like I was only security forces then, but I'm pretty sure we took over from Peaches if he was running I'm pretty sure it was Peaches running the airfield because they had the sickest Humvee. It was cammed up, and I remember just sitting there going, that Humvee, and it's doors off because obviously it was all unarmored back then, and they had sort of their own handmade cam job, and the two controllers that were there. It was awesome. So we had a bit of a chat to them. But that was good. And then the other one was the tidal wave. We went to do a humanitarian disaster relief job, and they wanted us over. I'd done a close personal protection course, so a bodyguard course with the SecFor guys. So I got a lot of jobs getting around just being bodyguards for generals and things like that. So, I went to Band Aceh to be, as part of a security team, to be a bodyguard. And then we realised there's no threat because Band Aceh at the time, they had rebels fighting against the Indonesian government. So Band Aceh is the northern part of Sumatra, which is the northern island of Indonesia. So went up there and did that, and that turned out to probably be out of all my combat tours and from the special operations side. That was probably my favourite, my most rewarding. Like I wasn't even armed, but it was like choose your own adventure. We were just helping out the locals, helping out everyone we could. We were there. The tsunami rolled through on Boxing Day 2004. I think we're in the capital of Medan 2 days later, and that third day. So what was that? What would that be? The 29th of December. I was in Band Aceh. And the devastation that Mother Nature can do, as you'd know, is just unreal. Like this tidal wave, it remapped the coastline, and we were finding fishing trawlers 6 kilometres inland. We're helping the Indonesian military. We were pulling whole families of dead bodies out of cars that were turned upside down, and these cars were miles inland. And it was just unbelievable, the power of that wave and how it just deconstructed and destroyed the Achenese coastline. So.
Jeez. Yeah, I remember. I think I watched the movie. We're pretty far removed from that, so it was like a movie for us with like Ewan McGregor, who we love because of his brother. It looked nuts out there. But I wanted to touch on why that was so rewarding for you, and I find that there's 2 things that people really love in our community, and one is doing the most good possible, or accomplishing as many missions as possible, and the problem solving element. And I find that when I'm in those situations where there's like, choose your own adventure, do what you need to do to get the job done. And, you have that flexibility. For me, at least, those times are always super rewarding, like you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. It's and that's what it was. We were just sort of plugging gaps and helping out wherever we could. One day we're sandbagging a river with the Indonesian Navy. The next day we're helping out with a multi-country as well as all volunteer organisations, aid tents. I was watching, they ran out of anaesthetic, and I was watching an Indonesian man who had gangrene on one of his fingers, and they amputated his finger, and he didn't even wince without anaesthetic. It did that. And there was even a time I ended up on the USS Abraham Lincoln, so they pulled in to, like, the Americans were there and they were helping out, and they were using their Seahawks to ferry aid around to their outer lying agencies. And we just met one of the fast jet pilots, and because they couldn't fly because they were in Indonesia, they were using them as like LOs in the provinces and just saying, hey, and they were flying around going, hey, look, we need aid here, and they were coordinating it. And we met one of the fast jet squadron leaders, and he's like, do you want to come out in the ship for a couple of nights? And we're like, yeah. A nuclear aircraft carrier, like, we don't have that capability here. So we rang up the boss on the sat phone. The boss is like, yeah, go for it. He brings in a helo. We all just jump on this helo. And we'd been out there for about 2 weeks at the time, so we hadn't showered, just been living off rations and like rat packs and stuff like that. Get on the ship, get the full. He goes, right, first things first, you blokes stink. We're getting you some flight suits, and we're going to wash your cams. So got our cams washed. They pressed them for us and everything. And then so we're kicking around in these flight suits. It was quite surreal. Getting a full tour, met the captain, sat in the captain's chair, and just cruised around, sat on there eating fresh food, and then watching air-to-air videos of guys that had been in the Gulf War and actually shot down Iraqi MiGs and things like that, and they're showing us bombings from Iraq War and everything. And I'm just, it was brilliant. The boss, when I rang the boss, he said, oh, just do one night there. And myself and the other guy, we're just like, nah, we're not. We're going to do one more night. So we just thought, we'll beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. And we got back and landed on the airfield there, and we're just strutting out. We kept our flight suits on, so we just strutted out in our flight suits, and the boys are just shaking their heads, going, "You dickheads."
Yeah, but you got to take the opportunities when they come. And, you've been chewed out before. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Just take the heat, and it's probably 100% worth it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not like he was going to send me home for it anyway, so.
Right, yeah. What are you going to do? Send me home from this terrible situation?
Yeah,
oh, exactly. Man, to everybody out there, that's one of those things. And I know I keep harping about it, but, man, just like being good at something and putting yourself in those situations, no matter what you're doing, that's the only way to get stories that are just ridiculous, that no one's gonna believe or understand later on down the road. But moving forward from that, how did the Australian CCT thing happen? Like, how did we even? How did
So
like? Yeah.
yeah. So what happened? Obviously, you know a lot about it. Come from the special airmen background, special warfare airmen background. We had to use, like, our special operations guys being SASR and 2 Commando, being the shooters. They had to use US combat controllers as their JTACs and special I think they had a couple of special ops TAC-Ps from the 17th at that stage, because that was before they went over to 724th. So I think they had a couple of them. And then, so word on the street has it that our special operations commander was drinking. So we were using, obviously, US CCT, and the word got out. It's like, why don't we create this capability ourselves? And at that stage, we didn't have an accredited JTAC course. So we had guys that had done FAC A, but were pilots, but they weren't accredited in accordance with the MOA, so they couldn't technically drop bombs off US aircraft. So word has it on the street that the Special Operations Commander Australia and the Air Commander Australia were at a mess function. So the picture about 20 beers deep, and a bet went on. And Special Operations Commander Australia goes, I bet you, to the Air Commander Australia, I bet you can't create a special operations capability, similar to what the US did with combat control, because we need JTACs. And by that stage, I think the schoolhouse had got its accreditation, so the accreditation team came over and fully accredited the schoolhouse with running the JTAC course. So that happened. That's the word on the street. I can't verify it. That's what we were told, but that was also at a mess function. So I like the story, so that's the one I tell to everyone. So yeah, it stood it up, and it stood it up as a special tactics project, because originally it was going to be a full special tactics squadron, but then they changed to go to 4 Squadron, which has its lineage back to World War I. It was an Australian squadron of biplanes, which did the first air-to-ground bombing. So they sort of kept the lineage with the FAC A and the JTAC side of things in that way. So in the beginning, we did that, and we reverse engineered it compared to what the US CCT did, where obviously they were air traffic controllers first, did the landing zones, drop zones side of things, where because we had the need for JTACing, we were JTACs first. So essentially in the early days, when I went through and did my rotations to Afghanistan, we hadn't done survey, or we hadn't done an air traffic control package either. So we were just special operations JTACs. And it wasn't until, I think, after my first rotation. So the special tactics project stood up in 2010. 2007. In 2009, it stopped being a project and became 4 Squadron Royal Australian Air Force here in Australia, and that's what combat control belongs to. So, but it wasn't until 2 guys, and I'll give a big shout out to them if they're listening, VW and Sully, came out. There was another US combat controller by the name of Mike Anderson. So 2 of our guys went away with Mike Anderson, who was at the 320th at the time, did a whole survey jump thing up in northern Queensland, and they came back fully spun up on survey. They go, we need this survey capability. So then we reached out to the schoolhouse, put a heap of paperwork together, and the schoolhouse, combat control schoolhouse there at Vietnam at Fort Bragg, and sent over VW and Sully, and they were obviously experts in their field, and they taught the first they were the mobile training team, taught the first survey. So that was the next step, and then we run it. We call it assault zone control, because we're not accredited air traffic controllers, but we can run an airfield, because we don't want the accreditation, like the ratings, because it's just with JTACing, with parachuting, with shooting, there's just too many competencies to keep up. So like the boys have got, like, it's internal competency that we've got to do, or currency, I should say. There's internal ones that they've got to do per year when they're on a team. But when you rotate from a precision strike team onto global access for us, like precision strike, you normally let your survey and your air traffic control sort of go by the wayside. You keep your insertion skills up, and obviously you keep shoot, move, and communicate stuff up, and vice versa. You normally, when you go to global access, you sort of drop in the precision strike thing. You're losing your weaponeering. You keep your currency, so you can still have how many controls it is per 6 months or year. I don't even know now, but and that's the way it went. So we reverse engineered it. So, and now just watching the boys. I was old map and compass, watching the boys with TAC, and they're lasing something and it goes straight to tack, and then they're just passing coordinates, and it's time to kill, the kill chain is just shortened so much. And even with survey, like we used to do it all by hand. We'd be with inclinometers like this, doing everything, and it's ridiculous. And then the dudes are getting the kestrels out, doing data readings and everything like that, and now everything's just digitally linked to that tablet. But before I got out, because I had all my supervisor calls, what it did was it just, and you would see this, it just drags everyone's head down there, and it's like, hey, the battlefield and the world's out there, that's only an aid, a tool. And it used to do it to me when I was starting to learn it as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, it sounds like it's very, very similar to the all the combat controllers that I know. Like when we're at the STS, it's you're on the survey side, the global access side, or you're on the precision strike side. And like you said, it's a lot to try to cram into your head. I don't think I understood how difficult it is to be a good JTAC until my second rotation, when I really was hanging out with my combat controller that I was deployed with. And I went to his room and saw all the stuff he has to do. And I was like, there's no way you can do this and keep on top of all your survey stuff. Because in my career field, every once in a while, someone will be like, why don't we just become JTACs? And I was like, pump your brakes. Because, the combat controllers are and the soft TAC-Ps, the level of JTAC that they are, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody else out there, but if I got to pick a JTAC in this world to save my life, like those are going to be the guys, because of how good they are and how dedicated they are. So I was just throwing it out there. I'm sorry? I
was going to say those two groups throw enough shade at each other anyway, don't they?
Oh, well,
TAC-Ps
nothing.
TAC-Ps and CCTs, they're always jumping out of there every time I see them.
Like brothers are going to fight. It's how it is, but like exactly. if an outside entity comes in, and some folks from the Navy want to start talking smack. Yeah, you're going to take it from all the Air Force guys. So, VW probably knows more about surveys or has forgotten more about surveys than I'll ever learn. And that's kind of a tough course, the math and everything else. And I guess my question is, now I'm just like going down the rabbit hole with people I know. What was the selection like? Like, how did you guys pick the first batch of who was going to be a combat controller? How did that team get put together?
It's and the battery of tests. Let me say, if I had to do the battery of tests, and this might be creeping excellence, because I had a lot to do with the implementation of the new test when I went over to the training side of when I left the operational side and went training. The battery of tests today that you do, there's like 8 different aptitude tests. And like problem solving, critical thinking, dual audio, and and then you've got memory on top of that. And then, so we're linked in with our local university down in Newcastle, and the university is like someone's writing their thesis on it, that's for sure. And we're just the guinea pigs, but they've created this computer program, and it's about following a ball around, how many colours are what, and then clicking every time in the a flashing light comes in the right corner. So it's all that multitasking, and then they judge it also. They've got an algorithm basically which judges it on how many balls you get correct versus how many clicks in the light you get, and then it goes from there. So, but for me, there was some specialist air traffic control test which you had to smash out in 6 minutes, and then there was a series of special forces, the ground special forces tests that you already had to do. That's just the aptitude wise. Then we had what we call the Special Forces entry test, which is a pretty much 30, let's say 24 hours of just physical testing, but it's test after test. I don't know if is that your ASVAB, or like, is that, what's the one for the career field? Like, it's just push-ups, heaves, 3.2, so a 2-mile run in boots, armour and rifle, things like that. So you got to do that. That's just to get on selection.
Yeah,
so
we
selection,
have sorry.
No, that's right.
No, you'd ask the ASVAB is just the mental test to get into the military, and then we have the IFT, which used to be the PAST, which is just your pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, run, and your swim. And then once you get into the pipeline, we have that like the operational fitness tests events where with the weighted runs and all that other stuff to make sure that you're athletic and you can carry weight and all that other stuff on top of the swimming and the cals and everything like that.
So for me, then selection is 3 weeks long, and look, it doesn't have to be exactly 21 days. It's just when the staff think and seeing it from the back end, because I've been, directing staff on it post, obviously down the track. I was the senior sort of one of the equivalents of the 2 Commando senior selector. So our selection is, because the Australian military is so small, we do a joint selection. So we do a joint selection with 2nd Commando Regiment, and it consists of like an individual phase. And mind you, obviously, you get all the beastings in all these as well, so you're never getting a full night's sleep. And as you know, so yeah, it's an individual phase which tests weapons, military appreciation, your knowledge, anything to understanding, TCCC side of things, everything like that. So it tests you get tested. There's another battery, so you redo a battery of tests, but you redo them without any sleep. Like they wake you up in the middle of the night and you've got to redo them, even though you've done that same test before. You've still got to redo them, and they match the school. Because there's all psychologists. It's not just for us, and I assume it's the same for pipeline and selection for you guys. It's not just it's not just the people from the schoolhouse. It's guys from the actual units that are on the directing staff, and then you've got psychologists on top of that, which provide that third layer. And because the psychologists are 90% civilian and have no idea, they're just providing pure information from the the behavioural and psychological background. So yeah, then you sort of go into a navigation phase, again individual. It's basically what we consider a long walk. So it's heavy pack. You're carrying 40 to 50 kilos of weight, all up with water. Maybe not that much. Let's say 40 kilos. So what would that be? About 90 pound all up.
Yeah.
That's just in armour and pack. Then you've got your rifle. And you probably, over those, it goes 3 to 5 days. It can get cut, roughly 3 to 5 days. It just changes. Every selection changes. So you can sit there and talk to people off the selection before, and it's totally different. But you're covering 100 to 120 kilometres, so not too bad over those few days. So again, that wears you down. And then you move into what we call demarcation, which is food and sleep deprivation. That goes 3 to 5 days. So you don't sleep or you don't eat for 3 to 5 days. And in that's you get put into your team or for that, and then you move around as a team. Like you still got to patrol around as a team. Some stands you're allowed to walk up the road, but they're all just problem solving activities. You might be training Indigenous forces, things like that. So it's varied. You might go through total different scenarios each scene. So yeah, and then that finishes with obviously the long walk out, and then you're stomping about 20 k's out, or you're running with a jerry can or 2 jerry cans. It just depends. Like I said, it varies each year. Some people sit there and get a bit funny about talking about it. I'm going, well, it doesn't matter, because the selection and these are the selections that I was on. I haven't been a directing staff on one of them for about 2-3 years now. And it's already, I know it's already changed. I'm just talking about the ones that I've seen. So, people can watch the podcast from Australia and go, oh, I know everything that's happening. It's like, day one will be this. It's like, yeah, but it might not be. It's, my information is from when I was there. So.
Well, and it's by design, right? And it's funny because I always tell people, I could tell you exactly what's going to happen during the selection process, but 3 days in, you're not going to remember any of that stuff anyway. You're just trying to survive and put one foot in front of the other and solve the problems that we're putting in front of you while you have no sleep and your food has been taken back. And you can watch it and know what's going to happen all day long. But until you're in that situation, you don't really know how you're going to react. And we're going to be watching you to see how you react. We're going to be asking your teammates what you're like when we're not around. So you got to perform no matter what. Whether we can't give you the answers to the test because we're going to beat you down and then still expect you to perform. That's the whole test. So I don't know. No.
No, I was going to say it's funny, exactly like that. One of the tests everyone knows is water testing in there. Water is the biggest leveler for any person in my eyes. It's easy on the body because you're not getting the shock in your joints, but water just freaks people out for some reason. I was lucky; it doesn't freak me out. But everyone knows there's underwater knot tying test on selection. So you've got to tie X amount of knots, and it's at the bottom of the dive pool. So we've got divers down there. They're safe. Our clearance divers sit down there on the bottom, and you got to go down, grab a piece of rope, which is tied onto a bar, untie it, then tie a knot. So a simple reef knot, a bowline or something like that. But you still got to dive. The diving down and sitting on the bottom because you can't do it above water. So you've got to dive down, blow your air out, which isn't. And a reef knot takes you 5 seconds. I could tie a reef knot as I push off up to the surface sort of thing. And then you've got to show the instructor, and they go, yep. And they give you the thumbs up, take the rope off you, dive back down, grab another rope, do a bowline. There's 5 knots. Yeah. And before that, you're jumping off like a, 10 or 20 metre platform into the water, which freaks some guys out as well. And then once you finish, you've got to dive underneath the Zodiac because the instructors are sitting in sort of Zods lined up, across the pool. And yeah, you got to dive under there, and that just freaks people out. And then we do there's another PT session that you do with rifles, like just the red guns, the plastic red guns, and just people holding something and trying to tread water, just absolutely. And just because you're in cams as well, that changes things. And you can tell people this is going to be there. They can train for it, but even added stress of being on there, just the whole situation. Like that's why I sit there and go, does it need to be a super secret? Because everyone knows you're going to put your pack on your back and go for a walk. So, everyone knows you're going to do navigation, land nav, but you still got to do it. And that's the part, like your brain breaks before everything else breaks.
Yep. It's designed to peel back the layers so we can see who you are under that stress. And it's going to happen no matter what. So, you made it, obviously you made it through selection. One of the first groups of people to go through Australian Combat Control. So what was it like? I mean, I'm assuming they were pretty keen to get you guys out there to be the first round of JTACs. Did they throw you right into the fire?
No. So we had a year long. So it's now for a combat controller start to finish is minimum 2 years. When I went through, because we didn't have our blue pipeline, we just had what we call the reinforcement cycle, which is a green side of the pipeline. So I went through that. That takes care of our insertion courses like driving, parachuting, all your free fall. Takes care of your amphib stuff. Like we don't have a subsurface capability, well, combat control doesn't anyway, and we don't want one because it's just another insertion means to keep up. So we got a above surface, but as you know, sitting in a Zodiac for 12 hours after you've jumped over the horizon and it's not fun. So you do an amphibious operators course. What else do we do? Demolitions. So you do basic dams, then you do breaching dams. Go on to that. Then we've got our precision strike direct access package, which is the close quarter battle, close quarter fighting. But the close quarter fighting is based around, it's created by a guy called Paul Cale, and it was based around obviously fighting in your equipment. So it's not just get on the ground and geese and we're just gonna have a roll. It's you're fighting in your body arm, and it's all about trying to work in pairs as well. Holding guys down and assist. But we talked highly about what we call the reactionary gap, where you come into a room and stoppage. But if someone's within that 6.3 metres, it's proven that no matter the quickest shooter in the world, can't get his pistol out and shoot before if someone decides to already charge. Like if they're already charging at you, then you've got no hope. So it's all about obviously hitting them with your rifle, or if you've got to go down, then your sock P dagger comes out or something like that, or just even whacking them with a magazine if you need to. So it's it is wrestling and jiu-jitsu based. However, it's obviously all in body armour and everything like that. So.
Yeah, it's that violence of action, right? And that's something you learn in the shoot house real quick when they have the OP4 that can grapple with you, is that when they're coming at you, you have to meet that with the same level or exceed their level of violence. And it's kind of cool, though, when you have all your body armor on, though, if you really get into it, like you weigh, 40, 50 pounds, 20, 25 kilos more than your body weight. And once you learn how to use it, it's pretty effective.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We were on a training exercise it was actually G20, and when I think Obama came over, so I was on the counter-terrorism team then, and was working some jets overhead. Like we had some jets flying a cap, and had an ISR bird up there as well, protected. And we're just doing some training activities. So we did a hit on this building, hostage rescue scenario. Came in, and obviously you got role players, and we've got target safety, so everyone's very safe. And we were using, it was all simunition, and they had simunition as well. So we've come in, hit the target, and obviously everyone's a threat until proven otherwise. So even the hostages, you sort of, you just got to prove them not to be a threat. One of the role players, he was briefed to do something, just go along with the game and just be a civilian caught up in there. So he wasn't a hostage, but he was there, and he was given to me because obviously they're fighting through the building, and this was sort of just on the top floor, and I needed to stay up so I could try and keep comms through the open door, through the fire door. And he decided, as role players do, to run his own scenario. So he started being a dickhead. So I sort of picked him up and threw him to the ground. The guy was 60 kilos dripping wet, so probably 135 pounds at most, if that, and not muscly. So I just sort of picked him up and, gave him the old DDT wrestling move onto the ground sort of thing. And then I've just gone, stuff this. And I've always wanted to do it, and it was just the opportunity. And I just basically flopped onto him. But I did a jump up, got horizontal, and then just went bam and just landed. And I could just feel every bit of life and wind come out of him. And he gave this little whimper, and I've just gone, assist. So then a mate of mine comes over. He's fully kitted up. He's just bomb dived on me as well, and we've flipped him over and we've plastic cuffed him and stuff like that. And I'm looking up at the target safety, like the safety officer, and I'm like, was that supposed to happen? And he's pissing himself laughing. And he's going, mate, he didn't stick to the script, so stuff him.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Stick to the script, otherwise bad things going to happen. You don't want to mess with these guys.
Yeah, because we get the reservists in, and they pay them reserve days. They ask for volunteers. I would never, after being on some of these missions, like just training missions, I would never volunteer. Like that's the only time I've got to do it. But I've just seen, some of the boys, like people just give them, they just push back an inch sort of thing. They all want to be the hero, and they just get slammed.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's running at 11, right, in their brains. You come through a door and everything. It's just ready, set, go. Man, I'm having too much fun here, but there's other things we got to get to, and I'm sorry. As a combat controller, deployments. I've seen some pretty radical footage you have on your page. How many deployments did you have as a controller?
As a combat controller, I did 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq. And then a couple of sort of minor ones, which were sort of just hate ADR side of things. But yeah, the combat ones was 2 in Afghanistan. First one in 2010, second one in 2012, and Iraq was 2015. I was due to go back for my third. I was the next rotation over. We'd just done workup, and then the Australian government decided to pull the pin around that time, so I missed out.
Yeah, 2015 in Iraq. Where were you abouts? Ish, if you don't mind saying.
Baghdad. I was in first of all out at the airport at Bayap in the glass house there, because it was a joint SOTF mission. I worked with a couple of combat controllers over there, and obviously we had Navy SEAL. I think Navy SEALs, because Navy SEALs and MARSOC. Oh, and we had the CRIF over there as well. We had 2 of the CRIFs rotated through, and then I moved in because of the way the stupid setup that it was, because the battle space was owned by conventional forces, and it was just big ego in there, and they wouldn't let the SOTF get in there. So they ended up running this strike cell out of the FOB in the green zone, and I can't think of the name of the FOB, but so I got pushed into there as the SOFONO. So there was myself, another combat controller. He was a stow, one of the best dudes I've ever worked with, nicest guy, college athlete, college wrestler, college lifter. Just those jets that are always above everyone else. Doesn't try to be, but the really good combat controller. I believe he's gone to the 724th at the moment. So
I think I know who you're talking about, and he's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Looks like Bradley Cooper.
Yes, yeah, actually, yeah, we were there because we came through to do a survey on one of the airfields in country while you guys were there. But yeah, he's one of my favorite people.
And then there's 2 Navy SEALs. I'd worked with SEALs before, but hadn't deployed with them technically. Like we, done a few. The guys that were in Afghan were doing, the direct action side of things. The commando mission, I think it was called. We'd do some joint stuff with them, and because I'd always link in with the combat control over there, so I had a bit to do. I was more, linked in with the combat control than was the SEALs. So this was the first sort of long time I'd been with the SEALs, and it's. Everything you see on the movies is true. Perfect hair, long hair, don't care. And all they did was just run their mouth the whole time and just talk smack to each other, talk smack to everyone in the strike cell. And they just didn't give a fuck. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, no, good dudes as long as they're on your side. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What's the most?
I'm sorry. Behind.
Well, yeah. Let's save that for another podcast. I think everybody knows what we're talking about. What was your most? Yeah, there's some stuff there. But I'm sorry. What was your most memorable deployment or experience as a controller? I'm assuming you become a JTAC. Like, what was the payoff?
So I dropped bombs on my first mission that I went out in 2010. turned into we went into a place that hadn't, the last people that were there was a Dutch outpost 6 years prior. And they said, just go in. It wasn't like we weren't hitting a specific target. They said, just go in. It was what we called a disrupt mission. So it was just go in and sort of strike to know sort of thing, like, find some intelligence, see what's in there. And we got into pretty much 5 days of shit fights. And that's where I dropped my first bombs. And got blown over got out in the landing zone. Like, I was hitting targets because we were getting pizzled. We were getting hit we weren't getting hit in the landing zone. Other elements were sort of getting hit because it was a sort of company size I say a company, but it's a commando company's not that big anyway. But we're sort of on the landing zone. So I had a pair of A10s and AH-64s, and they're just pulling up targets. So I'm just clearing them hot all the time. So doing multiple strafes. I get out in the landing zone because we couldn't get out we tried to get out for 2 days before that. We literally ran out. We had one radio per team. We're down to, because we couldn't get resupplied because we're only supposed to be in there for 24 to 36 hours. And so as you know, you suffer, you eat up and drink up before you go on target, and then you sort of minimise that because you're carrying batteries, ammunition, demolitions, all that stuff. And so we pretty much went 2 days without food. We're drinking water. Some of it, we had Puri tabs at the time. We didn't have the purification straws or anything. But we're drinking water out of the Afghani sort of wells and stuff. How any of us didn't get sick, I don't know. And we pretty much starved. So we were down to one radio per team, so the team commanders could communicate. And I think most guys, like I wasn't in the thick of it. I got shot at and got to shoot at people from my position, but I wasn't in the thick of it by any means. So, redistributing magazines. Most of the shooters had probably 2 magazines, 3 at most by that stage. And just because the air went red, so it was just dust storms. And then finally on the 5th day, the bosses on the ground just going, look, you need to get us out. By that stage, I'd already dropped. So I'd had 2 500-pounders off some Hornets, and then I had a B1B come on, and I did 3 500-pounders off the B1B. I remember the B1 checking on, and we didn't do any bomber cas at the JTAC schoolhouse at the time. So he comes on, he goes, yeah, bone. And I'm like, bone? I'm pretty sure. I said, confirm bone? I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a B1. Like, that's a strategic level nuclear capable bomber. Like, what the fuck's it doing here? So it checks on, and it's checking on at, flight level, 30, sort of Angels, flight level 300 sort of thing, 30,000 feet. Anyway, so I give it its coordinates, and I just went, I know where the area is. We've been hit there before. They've got it was a 50 cal minimum up there, maybe something bigger. We don't know. And it was just shooting down as the boys were clearing sort of north. And you could hide in the compounds, but it was taking chunks off. The Afghani koalas are built up with that much mud. Like, I've hit them with 84s, and they've done nothing. So this thing was taking chunks off. And so I went, I'm just going to send it this time. And I said, look, I need this taken out. What's your recommendation? They said, we'll go triangle pattern, 3 500-pounders onto that area. And they had the coordinates. It took forever to run in because those things have got to, pretty much fly back out to, say, Guam just to, turn around and run back in.
Yeah.
Drops the bombs, levels, it took part of the mountaintop off. That's how good it was. And all the boys over the radio just cheering, going, yeah, that's awesome. And so that was like day 4. Day 5, the bosses were like, look, we either need a resupply if you want us to stay in here, or we definitely need to get out. We're pretty worn out from fighting. We've had 5 days of fighting. So we're on the LZ. I'm hitting stuff, peppering the LZ, hitting all these little spotters and, people up there sort of taking shots at us and that to protect the 47s. The boss didn't want me to throw smoke because he says to me, he's like, no, I don't want to attract attention. I'm like, okay. VS17 panel it is because that's, primary alternate sort of for marking. So I've run out with this metre by metre VS17 panel, which in my eyes is no different than throwing smoke. That just attracts bullets to me. And I'm out there.
It's a giant
and
orange.
I'm still fairly, It was camouflaged on the back, but it was still fluoro orange on one side. How I didn't get shot at, I don't know. Anyway, I gave all the stuff to the A10s because he was a FACO, so he's controlling the skies, and I just said, look, no fires here, just let me know, sort of thing. Anyway, the 247s come in, and I didn't know this because I was fairly, I'd only been, that was 2010. I'd only just finished my training, went on work up and went over, so I didn't know this about aircraft. But obviously when helos are in finals, they, you can't just sort of give it some cyclic and power up and get away. Like once they're there, they're sort of committed. They've either got, they can't sort of just power up and put down here. They've got to fully power up and get out of there and do a go around, or they've just got to sort of, land. So the first, I'm like going, shaking it, and I was like, yep, cool, putting it away. I'm like thinking they're just going to land over the top of me, because that was the brief that I gave them in the LZ brief, to sort of land, whatever it was, east of me or something like that. First one comes down and nearly lands on me, and I'm like, this thing's going to land on me. And as you know, rotor wash from 47s isn't exactly easy to stand up, and I'm carrying 40 to 50 kilos still, because I've still got all my old batteries and everything. And it was the old radio, so the old 5590. So none of this stuff that the kids get today with the little 152s and everything. But so I'm still carrying a bit of weight, mainly in radios, and I've got like 3 radios on me at the time. And so it's sort of blown me down a bit. And then the second one is going to land on me. So I'm like picking this, like crawling on all fours, trying to stand up with this pack on. Rotor washers coming in. I get ragdolled across the landing zone. The pack comes up, hits me in the back of the head. I just smash myself down. And I've got video footage, and I'll send it to you, because the boys took the piss out of me. I got knocked out for a couple of minutes, and I was supposed to get on the first helo. And obviously, drills are, you've got one person each helo. They know how many men they've got to get on the helo, so they count them off. Then they give the thumbs up to the crew chiefs, load masters, and obviously power up and go away. Because there was shots going down, obviously the pilots were a bit antsy hearing all the aircraft chatter of all, suppressing targets and everything like from the A-10s. Yeah. The first aircraft, before they got the ramp up, so my mate, who's a good mate of mine, he was doing the counting. He was the senior enlisted for the commandos at that time, or for the commando platoon that I was working with. And before he could tell the loadmaster or crew chief, we've got them, it ramps up and they're powering up and they're off, because they didn't want to hang around. And he's like yelling at the crew chief going, I've got one guy down there, I've got one guy. Anyway, so they've managed to, they said, no, we're out. And so they've radioed through to the second aircraft. That had already had ramp up. So I sort of come to. I was only out for a bit, come to, and the ramp's up, and I could hear the rotors powering up. And then I just, I'm just legging it by this stage. Adrenaline's going, I'm legging it. And somehow the crew chief see me, and the information's gotten through. So there's video helmet cam footage from the guys inside. I think I might have the helmet cam footage on my Instagram, where, or at least a still of it, of me running in. But he's got helmet cam footage of the ramp going up, and you can hear it powering up, and then ramp goes down, and then I just run out of this dust cloud into the helo and just sort of throw myself onto the thing, and it ramps up and powers off. But funnily enough, that first aircraft actually had a fair few bullet holes in it as it took off. So I don't know whether it was copping them on the ground. The helo, that second one that I ended up being on, didn't have any. But the boys thought it'd be funny to make a video out of that helmet cam, and they've just to take the piss out of me, to have a bit of a laugh. And they've got the video footage. They've cut it in with a few other pictures, but it's the Chariots of Fire. That dun 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 dun.
I was going to say, it has to be Chariots of Fire.
And then someone run over this dust cloud. So it's definitely good. It's and that's the other good thing about special operations, is obviously you're not as restricted by rules, and because two of the bombs I dropped on that trip, the first 2 500-pounders went low order, so they didn't blow up. They one had a low explosion, the other one sort of broke in half and rolled down the hill. And all I got was just an absolute roasting over the net from all the boys going, what type of crap JTAC are you? You can't even get bombs right. We only bring you on these jobs for one thing, and you can't even do that. And I just got hammered until I dropped the 3 500-pounders, which sort of redeemed myself in everyone's eyes. I just got hammered. So.
Yep, no matter what, it's always the JTAC's fault with if something goes wrong with the bombs. Yeah, I mean, we gave our JTACs a pretty hard time. I was a weather guy and all the other stuff, so I took my fair amount of ribbing as well. But like those crazy experiences that you had, I think it's interesting that we haven't even talked about it yet, and we're coming close on time, is you ended up writing a book, but I also look at a lot of your posts, and you talk about emotional intelligence and all these other things. And the idea that so many so many people that do what we do kind of turned into like this savage type scholar. You know what I mean? There's something about the experiences that makes you introspective, and then you wrote your book and all the other stuff. Like what about those experiences? Did it change who you are, or were you always in tune with emotional intelligence and taking care of people and all that other kind of stuff?
No, it changed. It's definitely changed who I am. I changed as a person. So I medically retired after that 21 years. I went through a bit of a I went through mental health issues. So I got diagnosed with PTSD. People have been telling me for years that, yeah, you've changed, there's something different about you. And finally, push comes to shove and I had to accept it. So, and I mean, going through that journey, and I'm not out the other side. It's like a never-ending road. Sort of people sit there and go, "Oh, you're out the other side." I'm going, "No, there's days like I could sit here and just seize the world and operate up here, and then there's days where I can't get out of bed down here." And I believe that changes you. And I've focused on emotional intelligence for a long time because it's linked in with that critical thinking, that unbiased decision making, and I think that critical thinking has a lot to do with the job. Like you can't just sit there and have that bias with your thought process because it's not always going to be the correct answer. So I've become, I suppose, the boys sit there and go, "Oh, you used to be such a hard charger, and you didn't take shit from anyone. Now you're just a softie," and but it's the way it goes. So and I think that's just rolled over into writing and to helping other people like that. So,
well, and if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the book. Like, what's in the book? The book is called Havoc 06.
Yeah, so Havoc 06 is my call sign. So when you qualify as an Australian combat controller, completely qualified, you get a Havoc call sign. So, just like, US combat controllers use iron sight in places and things like that. So use a different, if you're deployed in a combat environment, it'll be a different call sign, but you get a Havoc call sign here in Australia. So I was Havoc 06, so the 6 qualified, and it goes in numerical order when you finish the courses. If you're in a peer group of say 5 or 6, it's who finished top gets the bottom one. So you go from there. There's already they've already put aside though Havoc 69. I think they're going to bid on that and they're going to donate the money to charities. So if you're over that one, so sorry to any people out there that offends, but the book it's an overview of my life story. So a bit about my childhood, my time in the security forces. There's a few chapters to fallen friends because, as you know, you don't go through this sort of career field. And I mean, people don't go through their life without having fallen friends. But I lost a lot to combat action. I lost a lot to suicide. I think is it Plato that says only the dead have seen the end of war. And another person, I can't remember who it was, but he quotes that if you touch war, war touches you back, sort of thing. So some people deal with it and don't have an issue, but there's a lot of people, like a lot of guys that I went to war with, are struggling. So it talks about that. There's a few combat stories in there from both Afghanistan and Iraq, and then it goes into a bit of. It goes into the survey stuff with VW and Sully. Like it's the standing up of combat control. It's a bit of my life story. It's a bit of everything and combat stories in there. And then it finishes off with how it affected my relationships, not only with my children, but relationships of an intimate kind and how it affected that because I was always away. Obviously, started suffering the mental health issues, so I was either really, really like high level angry and just wanted to burn the world to the ground, or I'd sit there and just cry over a TV show, which I never do, and it's just what's going on. So it talks about that. So I just wanted to share my story because now Australia's not in Afghanistan. I don't want these stories forgotten. I don't want the people forgotten. And if I can help one person by telling my story about mental health, then to me I've achieved something. That's why I try and volunteer with a couple of organisations here. Well, not try to. I do volunteer with a couple of organisations here in Australia.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that definitely hits home. And then, it is weird getting older because, when you're younger and you're just like full of, piss and vinegar and don't take crap from anybody and you think you're right about everything. But like, I think there's something that happens through your career where like, you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? You want to see the best in people and you want to help them out and achieve their goals because I mean, I don't know what it is. It's just like, I think it's a fairly unique thing about the community where most guys come out the other side with their struggles, right? But also, I don't know, for a greater capacity to try to understand people and to help them out. And I'm not really sure really why that happens or if I'm misreading the situation.
I don't know. I can't understand it. I think it's just maybe you get mature with old age, but at the same time, my girlfriend, she calls me Peter Pan a lot of the time anyway, and the boys gave me the nickname Peter Pan, the person who never grows up. So I don't know. You develop empathy, but I get a kick out of, not a kick, but it is that satisfaction. It helps me, but it helps me by helping them and seeing the rewards from it. Especially with mentoring a couple of people that I do, and even just the keynote speaking, tailoring that to what obviously the client wants, but the end state of it is, I've helped these people. So it's good. I enjoy it.
Absolutely. Hey, well, I know we want to invite you back on because Peaches couldn't make it. You guys are both combat controllers, so you guys can, JTAC nerdery out and all that other stuff. But I did want to ask, kind of a two-part question. What's next for you? You've written a book and you've gotten out of the military. And then on the backside of that, what is some advice that you would give to somebody, Australian, American, anybody that's thinking about getting into one of these types of career fields?
Execute your decision. So that's the biggest thing I've seen, and especially with so I'll just answer the second part first, because that'll lead into the first part. Execute your decision. The biggest thing I've seen in the corporate speaking side of things, as well as mentoring people, is people have no issues problem solving, and I talk to them about critical thinking, but the problem solving part that comes out of the critical thinking, people have no issues identifying what they need to do. It's dropping the hammer on that execution, which I think the military trains you quite well for, is that execution phase of the mission. And that's how I look at it. Life's a mission. This, new part of my life's a mission. So it's that execution. So just make your mind up, go for it, give it 100%. And I mean, there's so many motivational speakers out there. You can listen to Goggins, Jocko. We've got a few here in Australia as well. Like that, those people really do inspire. One of the biggest people, and I never got to deploy with him, but one of the biggest people, I met him. He was a very inspiring character. He won our VC here in Australia posthumously, unfortunately. And a VC for American viewers is the equivalent of Medal of Honor. Cam Baird, and he used to write on his locker. He was a team leader. He used to write on his locker, "Aspire to inspire." And I don't. That's his phrase. I don't use that. But to me, that aspire to inspire is such an inspirational, such an inspirational thing. So, to anyone looking to get in the career field, it's not easy. It's not for everyone. But have a crack at it. Give it 100%, because you're still doing more than 90% of the other population by just having a go. So, and it isn't for everyone. That's why there is a selection process, because it is specially selected people. And look, I can't say any more on that topic, I suppose, which leads into the next one. I want to spend all my time trying to volunteer, get some organisations up and running, and on the side part of that, start up my business, because it suits me. Doing a 9-to-5 job just doesn't work with my mental health at the moment. Like, there's days where I wouldn't be able to go to work. And it might sound funny. People probably sit there and go, "Oh, look at him talk," and he seems all right at the moment. He must be just putting it on, but that's great. But tomorrow, for some reason, I just have a bad night sleep and bad night of dreams and stuff, and I'll just wake up and I just don't leave the house. I can't get out. Don't want to do anything. I don't want to speak to people. I just want to be left alone. And so starting my own business with doing the coaching, like the personal life coaching side of things, that's where I want to go, and that's where it's slowly going at the moment, and it's baby steps.
Man, I mean, yeah. First of all, it's been an honor to sit here with you for an hour and chit chat, and I really appreciate you doing it. And I'm inspired, and I think one of the reasons we do this podcast, for me at least, is it's selfish, because I get to sit down with people like you, and you share your story, and I get to move on the rest of my life after having spent an hour with you. So I really appreciate it, and looking forward to having you on this podcast again. And everybody out there, as we wrap up, make sure you like, subscribe, all that other stuff, and make sure you leave some comments asking Troy to come back and talk JTAC nerdery with Peaches.
I want to hear more about SR. I know nothing about it. My only thing that I know is the old combat weatherman would sit there and blow up the helium balloon and let it up, and then put the inclinometer up and get the winds.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, that was definitely part of the job, but we just dropped an episode with the career field manager about SR. But maybe you'll have to come on 2 more times. And we can do cracking the nut on making Australian pararescue and SR guys. And then we'll also talk about JTAC stuff with Peaches.
You just got to plant the seed. Just plant the seed and, it sprouts or just, that's inception. Just let it out there and they will come.
All right. So you heard it here first. We're going to Leonardo DiCaprio, Australia, into making pararescue guys and SR guys. Troy, thanks again for coming on. And for everybody else out there, train hard. Oh, thanks, brother. And we'll catch y'all later.